Welcome back, everybody. Derrick Soo, your 2022 Oakland mayoral candidate. Well, you folks have been asking for my qualifications for Oakland mayor. What makes me more qualified than the current list of candidates that are coming on board, such as Sheng Tao, we have also Lauren Taylor, we have Trevor Reed, who just got into District 7 office, and she's already running for mayor. Hasn't been there 365 days yet, and now she's running for Oakland mayor. So that should already be a red flag for a lot of you. And then there's other candidates that have just come into the race also. So it's going to be a really good race. We have some really good candidates besides myself. And I'm going to share with you the reason why I am more qualified and more in tune with Oakland than my counterparts that are running for the same office. And so here's number one. I am very aware of the hot topics of Oakland. That's crime. We have crime that's way up in terms of petty crimes, in terms of home invasions, murders, shootings, and so there's a lot of violence going on in Oakland, and there's a reason for it, because Oakland has several issues. Number one, budget cuts. And well, not so much budget cuts, because they didn't lose anything. And right now we're just starting to be able to add some additional police officers because of attrition. And so it takes time to get those folks up to speed, trained, and out onto the streets. So it takes time for that. And that's something that we're looking 18 months to 2 years into the future before we see some of those recruits. Some of the other upticks in crime, as Chief LaRon Armstrong pointed out, ghost guns. Ghost guns have been a huge issue. I pointed this out to ATF decades ago, that the general availability of replacement parts and no tabs or limits on as far as being labeled replacement components. One could easily create a ghost gun with just store-bought components, and these are components that are available at practically every gun show that's here in the Bay Area. You can buy these parts also online. Our Attorney General Rob Bonta is currently writing new legislation to ban those types of sales into California, and that'll kind of stem at least put a slow leak onto the flow of ghost guns, because we know that they're always going to be coming in one way or another, and that feeds the criminals. The criminals here, they don't necessarily live here in Oakland, but they live in neighboring communities such as Antioch, Stockton, Sacramento, Central Valley, and way far away. You say, well, that's a long way to come for crime. Well, they come in, they do their crime for however long, or achieve whatever amount of goods that they can get within a certain amount of time. They don't rent homes, they don't rent warehouses. What they're doing, they're hiding in homeless encampments. I've been talking to law enforcement about this, because we've seen that. We see a lot of what happens here in Oakland during the summer and spring. We saw a lot of fires in encampments. A lot of times those were intimidation fires or burnouts. what that's meant to do is clear that section so that a gang or a criminal enterprise can take over that particular slot. And then that's normally what happens. We've had 3 attempts over the number of years here, and we've been able to repel all 3. There was one time when the criminal element did come in here, and that was during my 1-year absence from this location. And then I returned back out here, and within not even 2 months, it was 45 days, I had all of that criminal element removed and back behind bars from this location. And so I know what I'm doing. I'm hard and tough on crime. I can identify the criminals, identify what type of criminal element is lodged up in these homes. But the first thing that we have to do, we need to create those tiny home communities for the homeless on community land trust property. And there's a reason for the community land trust property and not building these multi-million-dollar high-rise affordable housing that your current administrators are screaming for. There's a real good reason why I'm against all of that, and it's not about the money. It's about the future. So we have to get homeless folks into housing with wraparound permanent services so that they don't end up back out here on the streets. And then by getting all of the folks that are actually wanting housing, we can now deal with that criminal element, because that exposes them. Everybody who wants housing and doesn't want to be on the streets gets into housing. I've been getting people into housing for nearly 2 years now, since the beginning of COVID. This camp, I've been able to reduce from a recent high of 32. We are now currently down to about a dozen people, because I've been successfully getting people into different programs, such as Operation Home Base was one of the first programs that I was able to get 8 families into over at the RV Senior Safe Park with the FEMA trailers. Then we had Project Room Key. I got a lot of people from this camp into Project Room Key. They went into, was at the Radisson and also Days Inn. And nobody went to the Comfort Inn. The Comfort Inn was the COVID positive or COVID exposed people. And so the folks that transitioned from Comfort Inn, and they were 14 days past the first positive readings and they're negative, they would move to the Radisson, and the Radisson would now enter them into Project Room Key. And the Room Key kept them off the streets. If you don't know the background of Project Room Key, I'll explain it to you sometime if you really need to know that, because it's not what you think. Room Key was not about helping the homeless. It never was. But anyway, by reducing numbers of homeless and the encampments, this allows the exposure of the criminal element, because they operate round the clock. What they're doing is clearly visible, and police have been slow, I mean extremely slow, to respond to my calls. And in fact, I had an incident here just before the 2019 incident in June, where I actually called Eastmont Station. Division captain came down here, spoke with me. I told him what was up. We had about 10 cars down here guns drawn, because this was a felon that I had just seen. And he is in possession of what appeared to be a real legitimate gun. And I knew this. I knew the felon and how dangerous he was. So anyway, police came down here. They looked at that, and rather than taking this felon in, because he's still in possession of an airsoft gun, this still poses a serious threat, and they just, you know, took the handgun away, or that airsoft gun away from him. So, and then came and told me, this is, you know, what was going on, and then told me to start trying to get along with some of these people, even though they're armed. Really, that's really what happened. And I mean, I couldn't believe what I heard myself. So anyway, we gotta get the homeless camps under control. Then once we get the homeless camps under control, we can deal with the criminal element that is currently coming in and dominating these camps. So anyway, you see what's going on. I don't know, stepping down there for them. But anyway, get the criminal element off the streets. A lot of these criminals don't live here in Oakland, but they are part of a gang or a group that controls tents and other shelters. The really big ones, the ones that do a lot of stripping of stuff, catalytic converters, car parts, and etc. You know, they build huge shelters and hide behind that within the homeless camp. And so even though I've been giving this information to Oakland police officers, they do nothing with that information and say, well, okay, thanks for the tip. So that's also a problem, because I'm telling them what the problem is, what the issue is, where to look even, and they ignore that. So that's another uptick here in the Oakland crime. We have gangs that have shot at us, and I've returned fire, because I am a licensed gun carrier, and that's what quelled everything down here. We currently have an understanding, a mutual understanding of mutual destruction here. Literally mutual destruction, because if they shoot at us, we will be shooting back at them. And it's been real clear, and they've kind of backed off. They're not here so much anymore, and that's a good thing. And so a lot of things happen down here, and so we have a lot of different ways to deal with these street crimes that can also translate over into law enforcement, some of the tactics that we use to alleviate the crime. But by getting homeless folks into co-governed tiny home villages, we'll get the true homeless folks into real permanent housing, long-term housing, along with the help that they need, career building, education, whatever's needed. Then we deal with the criminal element, and that's how we start lowering crime. And I know this has been going on for a while, because back in 2014, I was an early victim of exactly the commuter criminal. I call them literally the commuter criminal. And they come in from the out of town through BART. And BART now goes all the way out to Antioch. So we've been seeing a lot of criminal element, I have, since 2014, that come in, especially during the games. You know, criminal elements come in here. They, if your car isn't being watched, you know, they'll break into your car. You know, back in the day when I was on that end of the street, I had Raiders fans, you know, park their cars down there, and they paid us a little bit, not so much in cash, but in food, clothing, and needs that we had at the time. And so they would pay us in that, and we were perfectly fine with that. We watched their vehicles during the game, and I developed a trust with the first person because you know, when his vehicle was parked here originally, got hit, and it was a hit and run, but I got the picture of the vehicle that hit it plus the license plate. And when he came by me, I said, handed him a paper, said, "You're going to need this. Here you go." And he looked at it and he's confused. I said, "You'll see why you'll need that when you get to your truck down there." So anyway, I always work to establish good relationships with everybody and know that I'm not the bad guy here. So we start getting rid of the commuter criminals, because that's what's happening. They come here through BART, through Amtrak, and then they carjack cars. I mean, you wouldn't believe the amount of cars here. I worked with 2 different agencies on carjackings here just in the past 365 days. 2 different agencies on cars and carjackings, because they were found here and stripped. So I worked with those agencies, and we managed to get that group under control and off the streets. So I'm tough on crime. I don't know what any of my counterparts have in terms of their holster of battling crime, but I battle crime here in Oakland. I deal with the criminals and those that don't want to be criminals, because there are a lot of folks that are incarcerated unfairly and unjustly, and you know, I'm willing to work with those folks and clear their records. And for those that truly are causing harm and mayhem out here, I will be dealing with you, and that's why you, Oakland, need to vote me for Oakland Mayor. On the next series, we'll be talking about affordable housing and how by not building high-rises is the future. Thanks for joining me today. We'll be right back.